Hey, hey, baby, I got your money, don't you worry. Hey, come on now. Hey, we on a little bit different wave with the horror stories today. But I want to say first off, thank you for hanging out with me today. You know what I'm saying? Much appreciated. Cause I do appreciate your company. Trust me. And plus, these stories be getting kind of creepy, so I need somebody around me. Make sure you get your snacks. Make sure you get your goodies, cause guess what? Chicken butt. Exactly. You didn't expect it. That's the same way these horror stories be happening. Something you don't expect, and then boom, anything can happen. All right. So first things first is, like I said, thank you. Secondly, it's like dating horror stories. I'm sure somebody out there has a dating horror story that they could relate to. Hopefully, nothing to this magnitude. I don't know what's about to go on, but I've heard some wild things in my time. Trust and believe. I've had some, like, I wouldn't call it horror, but it was really creepy, kind of weird. So I staged left and I exited out. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get on with it.
This happened a while ago. I had downloaded Tinder begrudgingly just to try it out. I'd rather meet someone organically in my real life, but I figured it wouldn't hurt to try a dating app, especially because my friend met her longtime partner on there. Anyways, I had matched with a girl who I'll call R. Our first conversation took place on the Sunday evening, and I went to sleep at about 10:30 p.m. And on the next day, I went straight to the gym and work. When I looked at my phone around lunch, I had noticed I had a notification from Tinder. It was from R, and she had sent me a couple of long messages telling me very personal stuff. The last message read, "Did I scare you off?" I had sent a voice note to my friend, asking if I was simply being paranoid or was that a little red flag. I mean, it just felt a little clingy. I decided to respond, and I explained that I was in work, and I responded to her messages. We only spoke for a week, but throughout the week there were several red flags that I ignored. I felt like I was being paranoid, but looking back, I really don't think I was. She kept talking about her ex, and she was constantly complimenting me. She had asked for my phone number after one day, and I said no. She was upset about this, but I told her that we had to talk some more before I felt comfortable doing that. She then said, "Well, ask me anything," whenever I explained that I needed to get to know her better. Looking back, I feel like this might have been her way of trying to get my number quicker, if that makes sense. I guess now is a good time to mention that I'm a girl too. R then told me that she was from another country and that she moved here due to her parents being homophobic. She told me that she had no relationship with her mom, which becomes relevant later. As our conversations progressed, she had started to get overly flirty, constantly telling me that I was beautiful, the most beautiful girl in the world, and so on. Her location was only 1 hour away according to her profile. She was always talking about her ex, and honestly, it just never felt right to speak with her. But again, I thought I was being too judgmental, and I kept talking to her anyway. By day 5,
I mean, look, I don't know why people take red flags as yellow flags. You know, when you see a yellow light, it's proceed with caution, but also slow down because it's about to turn red. When you say red flag, that means stop. People talk about red flags and they let them accumulate like you're collecting an award or something like that. I give somebody, at best, and depending on what it is, at least 2 times to be like, all right. Second time, I'm like, you're already, put in a lane where I'm just like, I can't do this. This is not, this don't work.
5, she had asked for my number yet again, and I gave it to her. She messaged
Especially people that over compliment somebody. I don't like that. That's a big red flag for me. I'm like, okay, relax.
me right away and told me, "I really hope you don't regret giving me your number," which is pretty eerie looking back. The day after I gave her my number, she had asked if she could ask me something. I said sure, and she asked when she could take me on a date. I told her that I wasn't sure. She started to guilt me, saying we'd been talking for a while and that we had to meet sometime soon. Honestly, the thought of meeting her just felt wrong. Something always just felt slightly off. I ended up saying that if we met, it would have to be a Saturday. And suddenly she had us going on a date that Saturday coming. She told me we should get coffee and go for a walk, which I agreed to. Part of me felt kinda weird about it all, but I thought I was being silly. Looking back, I now realize I cared way too much about seeming paranoid. My entire body was screaming at me to run away because I knew something was off deep down. But you live and you learn. I'm still a young girl, so I guess it's normal to make dumb decisions sometimes. Anyways, she insisted on driving to where I live to have a date with me. She told me it was 2 hours away despite her profile having her as 1 hour away. I told her I'd rather meet halfway, but
Watch it be a dude, yo. I mean, there's still crazy chicks out there too, but watch it be a guy or something posing as a girl.
she insisted on coming right to where I live. She didn't know my address, and she suddenly told me that she was going to come over to my house after our coffee. I was taken aback, and I told her she couldn't come to my house because I didn't feel alright with that. This next part makes me cringe to type out, and I can assure you that I cringed just as much when I read it. She then said, "When I fuck you, it has to be at your house. I share a bed with my mom right now."
Hold
I
up.
was immediately put off.
What?
She then said, "When I fuck you, it has to be at your house. I share a bed with my mom right now." I was immediately put off. I don't care what other people do, but for me, her saying that and being so pushy was just really unattractive. Sex is a big deal to me, and I just got such awful vibes from this girl. It was almost like she was telling me we would have sex, which also put me off. Anyways,
If she tells the rest of the story and says that she still went out on a date with her, like, there is a portion of my brain that has zero sympathy for stupidity, and the other portion of my brain has all the empathy and sympathy for humanity, but it is lost in just being stupid. Like, that's like the biggest banner red flag to like not go along with this whole situation. That's weird.
well, we're talking on this social networking app called WhatsApp. And for anyone unfamiliar, you can read a message on there without opening it by clicking the notification in the notification panel of your phone in a certain way. So I did that, and I don't actually know what made me do it. Usually I would click on her message right away, but this time I looked at it without even clicking on it. The moment I clicked on it, she'd know I'd seen it. I immediately called my best friend and then told her everything. She had been telling me for a while that I wasn't being paranoid, and that if I felt something was off, then it was. She then burst out laughing when I told her about the weird sex comment, purely out of discomfort and shock, plus the obvious cringiness of it. Another thing though, the comment about sharing a bed with her mom freaked me out. I don't care how bad it sounds. It just seemed weird as hell to share a bed with your mom at her age. I mean, she was in her mid-20s, and also she had told me that she didn't even speak to her mom. She said that she lived alone here, and that her mom lived in her home country and they didn't speak due to her mom hating her for being a lesbian. So she had obviously lied. Plus, I just felt like it was weird that she was sharing a bed with her mom, and everything just boiled over in my mind, and I suddenly realized I was so stupid for talking to her. As I was talking to my friend, she had also messaged me to tell me that she smacked her aunt. And basically she told me she hit her, but it was a joke, and that I'd never have to worry about her hitting me. That freaked me out too. My friend then told me to just ghost her, and that's what I did. I blocked her phone number and then blocked her on WhatsApp. So the next morning I woke up, and she had messaged me from another number telling me that she didn't know what she did to me. My friends all said this was odd, but I felt really bad because I know that ghosting is bad and immature.
It's not illegal. Bad? What you mean? She just said that when you guys go out, she's gonna blank you. Talking about she sleeps in a bed with her mom, but her mom hates her because she's a lesbian, and she hit her auntie or whatever. Bro, like, she is disgruntled in every way, shape, or form. Like, what are you talking about?
5 days had passed. I decided to unblock her and message her to clear the air. I just felt like I had to be mature and tell her my issue with her instead of just ghosting her. So I then messaged her and I introduced who I was, and I told her that I wanted to tell her why I ghosted her. She replied telling me to explain myself, and I did. She then replied, saying, "First of all, I'm never violent with women in my life because I'm not aggressive, and I get on top of my aunt to fight her because it's a joke." Then she said that I clearly had issues and it was ridiculous that I didn't want to meet her because I apparently need to meet people sometime, and she wasn't moving too fast. It was just me moving too slow. Then she said, "I only asked you on a date, not to marry me, and it wasn't just for sex." But she ignored the fact that she invited herself to my house and then told me that she was going to apparently fuck me. She also said that she wasn't using me for sex, but that sex isn't a big deal, and she didn't see the point in waiting around since she liked me. This pissed me off again. This expectation and the fact that she would be telling me what we would be doing instead of actually being engaged with me and making sure that I wanted to be intimate with her. It was just fucking weird and so creepy and desperate. She then told me that I was just like her toxic ex who had cheated on her for 2 years. Then she said, "I stayed because I'm such a loyal person." So basically calling me toxic because I didn't want to fuck her after she invited herself to my house.
Why are you having a conversation? You do not need to explain yourself in any way, shape, or form. If you feel out of place, if you feel uncomfortable, you do not need to give anybody anything, like zero information as to why you feel the way you feel. Like, there should be no explanation to what is very simple. You feel uncomfortable, so you gotta bounce. Simple as that. You don't gotta tell them that. I
ended up getting so mad, but I realized there was no point in arguing. I'd done the mature thing by saying my piece, and there was no point in saying anything else. So I then replied that I wouldn't message her again, and she replied later telling me not to be hard on myself. I blocked her again, and that was it. All I know is I feel like I dodged the biggest bullet in the world. Now, I don't know if this story is any good because it really might suck, and it might not be that scary, but I guess it shows the importance of—
It sucked. It wasn't scary. It was just dumb. This is dumb.
Of listening to your gut instincts and to never explain it away or downplay it. You aren't being paranoid, and if something feels off, it definitely is. It's usually a red flag if someone's acting desperate and wanting to meet you right away, and also not caring about your boundaries. There was a lot of weird things about R, and I'm honestly just glad that I never met her, because if this was just her messaging, who knows how she would have been in person. Stay safe, everyone. A few years ago, when I was 21, I was on a date with a guy that I had met on a dating app. I'm the type of person who wants to really get to know people. So when I was on the apps, I would prefer to meet up sooner rather than later just to see if the sparks are flying. Our first date was in a restaurant. It wasn't anything posh, but it wasn't a fast food joint either. I'll call my date Calvin. He seemed like a regular guy in our chats. He cracked a lot of jokes, but it was never inappropriate, so I didn't get a red flag. He was polite too, and he seemed like a regular guy. However, I quickly realized upon meeting in person that I'd been mistaken. Calvin was trying too hard with the jokes, and he started to be off-putting. I arrived 5 minutes early, and he was there waiting for me, all fine and nice. When he greeted me, he had tried to fist pump me. When we said hello, he then laughed that he was really glad I was hot in real life. I cringed a little, but I tried not to be judgmental. Our conversation went down.
There is just judgment. Just the same way as, hey, I'm not going to go down this dark alleyway to get to my car. I'd rather go down this well-lit way to get to my car. Even though it's longer, it's more safe. That's called a just judgment. The fact that he said something as cringy as that, I'm judging the hell out of him, boy. What?
Hill and fast. He cracked jokes about literally everything I said. I told him about my job, and he had made a sexist joke about how he was shocked that a woman was smart enough for it. I made a face and was about to answer him back, but he made yet another sexist joke.
See, like these types of red flags should be able to pick up on them and then dip. That's a skill, though. You gotta learn that and then eject button immediately.
I was eventually able to tell him that he wasn't funny and this wasn't the way to woo me, but he just made more jokes. I remember thinking, yeah, this is gonna be a long night. I was hungry though, so I decided to just sit it out. I mean, it couldn't be that bad, could it? Well, it was.
For the food.
I tried to ask him questions, but he just continued cracking jokes, and he wouldn't be serious at all. He also told me that he loved pranks, and he went on and on about how he loved to pull pranks. At one point, he had asked me how many sexual partners I'd had, and he informed me, "You don't look like the type of girl to put out easily." And then he laughed like a hyena when he said this. I then told him that this wasn't appropriate to ask on a first date with someone that he didn't really know. You guessed it. More jokes. He was disrespectful and he mocked my food choice, mocked my drink choice. Then
she still has the legs to get up and leave. But she's deciding to stay and take disrespect for food. That means you can be bought. That's not good. You need to increase your own morals for yourself. That's crazy. Like, there would be no way. Corny jokes, disrespectful attitude, lame date. Like, bro, I'm gone.
And asked me if I was getting a dessert after my main meal. Then he made a joke about how I'd ruin my figure if I stuffed my face. I was fed up by this point, and I just wanted to get away. I didn't have dessert, not because of his little smart-ass comments, but because I just wanted to go home. I was so done with this absolute clown. When we left the restaurant, I had turned to him and I said I was going home, but that I was glad we met and got to know each other. I said that last part in a way where it wasn't suggested that I liked him. Hopefully that makes sense.
That's not how he took it, though.
He asked how I was getting home, and I said I was going to walk. It wasn't far, and it wasn't extremely late at night, and I felt safe doing the walk. It was bright, and I felt fine. Calvin said how he wanted to walk me, but I just said no, it's okay. He continued to insist, however, and it was annoying me. I even began walking after saying no thanks, and he started to follow me. I felt really annoyed and awkward, but I just continued walking. I eventually had an idea and then said, "Fine, you can walk me up to my street." He grinned and he was even excited about it. He continued to annoy me and I tried to acknowledge.
This is what I'm talking about. Like, there's so many instances where you could have just dead stopped it and you're allowing him to find where you live.
His existence every so often to be polite, whilst also being careful to not lead him on. Now, I wasn't about to let Calvin walk me to my place. I decided I'd lie about where I lived, then dash home without him. My plan seemed to work, as when I was about 5 minutes away, I walked into the wrong street and then stood at the bottom of the road. I told him this was it and that I was going home now. He told me that it was great to walk me home and that he enjoyed himself. I grimaced and then said goodbye. He gave me a hug and it was incredibly awkward. My arms were pinned to my sides. He pulled away and then smiled at me, then turned away and started to walk away. I waited until he was fully out of sight before dashing off into the correct street. I then walked slower to my house as it came into view. I was sighing to myself and thinking about how shit that day was, how I was going to tell him right away this isn't going to work, how I was unmatching him, etc. I got to my front door and got my key out. I unlocked my front door, and as I put the key in the lock, I had heard footsteps dashing up behind me. I unlocked the door and then had this feeling of horror and panic, like I've got to get into my house right now. I didn't even turn around, but it was too late. I then felt arms wrap around me and then push me into the door. I was pinned like sideways, if that makes any sense. Just in my doorway, front door wide open, and I felt breath on my earlobes. A voice then whispered, "You didn't want me to see where you really live, did you?" I thought, this is it. I'm going to be raped and murdered by a psycho. Just as quickly as the arms had wrapped around me, they let me go, and I was then met with hooting and cackling laughter from behind me. I spun around in panic, then saw Calvin standing illuminated by the streetlights outside. In that moment, I had felt a mix of things: fear, panic, uneasy.
This could have been all avoided. All of it. All of it avoided. Every single bit of it. Doesn't mean what this dude is... nothing this dude is doing is right. Stupid. It's dumb. But, that being said, it's like... it could have been dead stopped before the meal came.
And total rage. I stammered out "What the hell?" and he continued laughing. I stood there in shock and anger as reality then sunk in. Calvin finally calmed down enough to tell me that he knew that I didn't live where I'd claimed, that he knew I wasn't filling the date, and that he thought he'd pull a prank to make me laugh. He just kept saying, "I thought you'd find it funny," when I ended up erupting on him. I then shouted at him that it wasn't fucking funny to creep on a woman, follow her home, and then grab her from behind and whispering menacing words in her ear. I was so fucking angry. I couldn't believe how clueless and careless this total son of a dick was. I told him to get off my property and to just leave me alone. He seriously acted like he couldn't understand what the big deal was. I was so angry and I felt so shaken up by this. I was even angrier that this idiot had gotten to me so deeply. I told him to leave, and he did. I slammed the door and locked it, and immediately unmatched and blocked him. I praised myself for not having exchanged numbers with him or any other social media. I immediately called my mom and best friend to then tell them about what the hell had just went down. They were just as mad and horrified as I was. I was of course relieved beyond words that nothing bad had happened to me, but it was really terrifying in that moment. So to any men listening, don't do this shit. It isn't funny. Women have a real fear of men following us and trying to harm us sexually and physically. These pranks will never be funny, and I refuse to believe Calvin was really that dense that he didn't know exactly the fear he was instilling in me. I wonder if...
No, there's really guys out there that have zero... there's a lot of people out there that have zero social instinct, but there's a lot of guys specifically that have zero social awareness, that they cannot feel when, you know, emotions and vibes kind of change. They can't sense that because they're all about themselves. Those are narcissistic, prideful kind of people that's like really all about them and what they do, and they can't sense that because you're not the focus. He is.
If he wanted to punish me or something. It really unnerved me to know that he knew where I lived. That night I had the house to myself because my roommates were out. I really hated being home alone after that, and I was so hypervigilant and very paranoid afterwards. I was glad to move out a few years later into my own place, and if Calvin ever happens to hear this, all I have to say is fuck you. I hope I never see your sorry ass ever again.
I wish you said that in the beginning. I guarantee you it'd been way gooder.
When I was 19, I started dating.
Way better.
For context, I'm a girl. I met a guy through Facebook dating. It was a friend of a friend of a friend situation. His name was Scott, and he was tall with brown hair and tattoos on his right arm and hand. He seemed normal over our messages, so we had decided to meet up at our local coffee shop.
Right.
I live in a fairly big city, but it wouldn't be busy where we met. It was nearly afternoon, and he was right on time. He went in for a hug when we met, but it felt natural. We got our coffees and a snack, and it settled down to chat. We were seated at a nice big window, and I felt warm and fuzzy. Scott was 21, and he was more muscular in person than I'd initially realized, but that didn't bother me. I've never cared about body type much. He was wearing a tight t-shirt, and I felt like he was trying to draw attention to his arms. I had asked about his tattoos, and instead of telling me the meaning behind them, he had asked me if I'd like to touch them. I stroked one of them and then complimented it again. He started being a bit weird from here on out. He started flexing his arm, and in my head I was just thinking, what? I thought he was nervous, but when I moved my hand away, he actually grabbed it and put it back on his arm. I then stared at him and tried to pull away. He held my hand on his arm and then said, "You like how strong I am?" I mulled over on what to say, going through a list of possibilities.
So cringe.
Do I cause a scene? Do I stay calm? What the fuck was he up to? I tried to keep my voice calm but firm, and I told him to let go of my hand. He did, and he started laughing. It was an uncanny laugh, like he was some alien or something. It was so fake. I then took a drink of my coffee, and it was suddenly very awkward. He kept grinning at me, and I just felt uncomfortable and weirded out.
Of course.
I tried to ask about his tattoos yet again, but he just wouldn't tell me about them. Maybe there really was no backstory, but I assumed there would be. He started talking about how he loved the gym, and I said that I could tell, and sort of laughed to keep everything light and breezy. He then started to say that he loves being strong and loves working out. Nothing wrong with that at all,
about himself.
but I was still weirded out at having him held my hand down like that. When he stopped talking, he had asked what I thought about his muscles, and I just said something like, "Yeah, it's cool that you have a hobby you enjoy." He got all serious, and he asked again if I liked them. I decided to just say yes, and he smiled at me. He said good, and then it was his turn to take a drink. I felt really weirded out now, and I was starting to really wish the time to pass so that I could just leave. Wishing that I had some button to do that thing in the movies where someone phones you, and then you pretend you need to leave for an unforeseen circumstance. I decided to steer the conversation to something else entirely, but he wouldn't budge. He stared at me, and he told me that he was really into having girls worship his muscles, like this was a bedroom activity that he liked. Now, I don't think there's anything bad about
This dude got like probably a crazy fetish or a kink or something like that. I mean, those aren't bad, but there's some weird fetishes out there. I ain't gonna lie to you.
that, but he was acting really weird prior to this, and it's the first time we'd met. Not really first date shitter in my opinion. I was unsure of what to do. I feigned interest, asking how he learned that about himself. Big mistake. When he finished telling me way too much intimate information, I excused myself and I said I needed to use the toilet. I took my bag with me, and he noticed but didn't care. I then went into the bathroom and called my mom, asking her what to do. She told me to be honest and just tell him that I wasn't feeling it and to leave, but I was scared to look rude. Chronic people-pleasing tendencies at this age. I don't know how long I was in the bathroom.
Look, that will save your life to not people please. It will save your life. It will save you time, effort, energy, all the things that you wish you got compensated at work for, but you get paid pennies to the dollar, so whatever.
But it was definitely too long. I ended up deciding that I'd fake being unwell. I came back out and he was facing in my direction, like he'd watched the bathrooms the entire time. I decided that I'd rather embarrass myself and get out of this shitty date than just be assertive and risk being rude. So I told him I had an upset stomach and I really needed to go. I lied and I said I was lactose intolerant and they must have put in the wrong milk in my drink. He had to have known I was full of shit. Excuse the unintentional irony. Still though, he acted like he believed me and we walked out. He then walked me to my bus stop and he even went in for a kiss, which I swerved. As soon as I was on the bus, I blocked him. I avoided the friends of friends of friends who knew of him from there on out. I know this story isn't the most pearl-clutching, spine-tingling horror story in the world, but there's some pretty unsettling thing about how you think someone is normal after chatting to them, and then underneath the surface is a whole world of weird. His behavior was very weird. He was obsessed with his own muscles and got way too sexual way too quick. Red flags galore. Hey everyone. That's about it for today's stories.
Yeah, we better find some better ones, bro. Those were just common sense. Common sense, avoid those. Those are easy to avoid. Let me see that. Ooh, stalker. Ooh. I want to take one more shot at the dating one. Because those were just...
How do you take 20,000 children?
Easily avoidable dating stories. So...
Hey everyone, welcome back. So I'm just going to be...
Because I'm not going on a whim at all. I believe everybody, that follows me, subscribes to me, is smart, intelligent individuals.
Be honest, all of these stories are pretty dark and disturbing. The last story specifically mentions very graphic sexual assault.
Ooh.
So you might want to skip this whole video.
So you already heard the forewarning. You know what I'm saying? This is not for the faint of hearts. So we will continue.
I'll have certain stories labeled in the timestamps in case you want to skip any. But I'm just going to go ahead and say if you don't want to hear disturbing stories, you should probably skip the whole video. If you have your own disturbing dating story yourself, you can send it at southerncannibal.com. Without any more interruptions, let's go ahead and get started. And remember to always
stay hungry.
Stay hungry.
I mean, that's a weird catchphrase.
I'm a female. And this happened not too long after I had just turned 21. I'm also a lesbian, which is relevant to the story. I went on Tinder with the mindset of whatever happens, happens. Everything was fine for a week, until I had matched with another girl who I'll call Tony. Her profile said she was 21 too, and my age range was set to exclude anyone under 20. She looked her age, and there was no issue. The second we matched, she messaged me. I didn't think much of this. I figured she'd been on her phone and just received the notification of us matching right away. Honestly, sometimes I felt like pulling my teeth trying to get other girls to talk on Tinder. I hope that doesn't sound rude saying that, but most of the girls I matched with just seemed really shy to the point of awkwardness, and it made me feel awkward too. But that's dating apps, I guess. Anyway, Tony messaged me first, which I appreciated, and the conversation really flowed. She replied within seconds to everything I said, which did feel slightly overwhelming, but I told myself that I was being too judgmental. We matched in the afternoon. It was like 4 p.m. on a Saturday, and we did message back and forth for a bit. But I had plans that night, so obviously I told her this, and at a certain point I wasn't on my phone much because I was busy. Well, at the end of the night, I saw that I had messages from her, but I thought I'd check them the next day. When I did look, she had sent me 20 messages, some long and some short. She was telling me random stuff she was doing as well as asking me what I was doing.
I've had that situation before. Overwhelming messages is absolutely insane. Like, I just met you. We weren't having any deep context or any deep, conversation to where we needed more context, and then you want to tell me everything that you're doing? Oversharing.
She messaged me good night 3 times, and she told me that she hoped I was sleeping well during the night, as well as saying good morning at 9 a.m. I felt really suffocated and uncomfortable, but I felt really bad for her, and I didn't want to be rude. I thought maybe she was just nervous. Maybe she was coming off as super clingy because she'd never talked to another girl with the possibility of romance occurring. It's always a bad idea to ignore your gut instincts, but at the time I really hated seeming rude. I've since learned that it doesn't matter what anyone thinks of you. If someone's being weird, that's it. Walk away. Don't give them the benefit of the doubt when you have that gut feeling that something's wrong.
You have to trust your gut. Say it with me now. You have to trust your gut. You have to trust your gut. It don't matter what the feeling is as far as, oh, I might be rude, whatever. Scratch that. We talking about life or death. Life or death. Come on now.
I've had girlfriends in the past, but I know some people don't actually experience that until later. So I thought maybe she was one of those people. I replied nicely, and I told her about my night and asked how she was doing. Again, she replied instantly. It was sort of unnerving. It was like she was glued to her phone 24/7. I felt really pressured to reply fast as well, because if I didn't, she'd send more messages. We chatted for a bit, and the topic of my birthday came up. I told her I was excited to finally be 21, when she then told me that she was 19. I was confused by this because her profile said that she was 21, but she told me it was a mistake and she couldn't change it.
Cap.
This had put me off about her even more, especially with what she said next.
I mean, she can't.
She told me
she
that
can't change her age on the dating app, but she meant to put 21. Like, there's no way you just skip a whole 19, 20, like 2 years, bro. Stop it.
it said in her bio that she was really 19 and had put her age in wrong, but that was a lie. I knew that I'd read her bio very carefully before swiping on her, and I know for a fact she did not mention any age mistake. I called her out on it, and she said I was mistaken and to see for myself. What do you know? Her bio suddenly said right in the first line, actually 19, not 21. She obviously edited it right then to try and manipulate me into believing her, but I knew her bio never said that before. I was really annoyed at her for lying. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with an age gap of 19 and 21, but for me, I assumed that I wouldn't have much in common with someone at 19. It isn't a huge gap, but just how I felt. Tony lying to me about her age and going to such a length to pretend that she didn't was also a gigantic red flag to me.
Gigantic.
Surely if you really did somehow input the wrong age, you would delete your account and remake it, wouldn't you? I no longer replied to Tony, and I finally just unmatched with her. You'd think that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. When I was scrolling through Tinder that night, I came across a profile from Tony. Her age still said that she was 21, but it was clearly a new account that she'd made on a different device. Her profile photos were all the same, and her bio had all caps and said, "Please just talk to me. I'm sorry, but I really enjoyed talking to you." It addressed me by my name, so I knew it had to be addressed to me. I was so creeped out that I immediately put down my phone and just tried to compose myself. I thought about deleting my own account altogether, but I wasn't sure what to do. I swiped left so we wouldn't match.
She just said what she should do, and then she said she's not sure what to do. It's because you just didn't want to delete the app. It would have been that simple, man.
Then I thought about reporting your profile. Too late now though, since I'd already swiped her away. I hadn't met anyone that I thought could develop into anything, so deleting my account wouldn't have even been a huge deal. Part of me wanted to avoid going on the app, but I kept checking it out of paranoia that I'd see another Tony account. A couple of days passed, and an account from her showed up again. It basically said the same thing, with my name in her bio as if she was talking directly to me. Now, I lived in an average town at the time, so it wasn't like a massive city with millions of people crammed in the same vicinity. I was so freaked out and I knew that I had to delete my account. I never heard from Tony since then, thank God. I don't know what her deal was, but it creeps me out to think that she somehow made other accounts and got the algorithm to see me. I still have so many questions. How many accounts did she make? Are they still up there right now? Is she still searching for me to this day? What did she expect to happen when she lied about her age? And why the hell was she so clingy? It's the first and hopefully only time I've ever had to deal with someone behaving this way. I'll never use Tinder again. I'd much rather meet people in real life.
And low-key, social media.
This was an experience that I hadn't thought about until recently, when I was having a conversation with a friend. I'm in my late 30s now, so I had to be between 17 to 19 years old when this happened. I had briefly dated this guy I met while I was working in the mall. He'd come into the store and flirt with me almost every day that I worked. I was extremely shy and naive, and I wasn't really used to guys approaching me. Thinking back on it now, I'm quite sure he noticed my lower self-esteem and awkwardness. This makes you easy prey for a person with ill intentions. He was a little older than me, being in his mid to late 20s at the time. We had our first date while I was on my break at the food court. Everything went fine until he invited me to his place to hang out after work. Now, this should have been the first red flag before red flags were even a thing. I initially blew it off, but after a few weeks of talking to him on the phone and him still coming to my job for our food court break dates, I decided to meet up with him one day after work. He actually didn't live far from me at all, a good 10 minutes away if that. So I'm on the way to his house. I remember feeling uneasy but also thinking that I was just nervous. Like I said, I hadn't had a lot of dating experience and I was extremely self-conscious at the time. I was damn near rehearsing in my head cool things to talk about and how to hide my quirkiness. I arrived at his house. I go inside and we sit in the living room and start watching TV. He then sparks up a blunt. Now, I smoked, but not heavily. I smoked more now than I ever would have thought of back then. You know, life to spares as a millennial. But anyway, he passes the blunt to me. I hit it maybe 2 or 3 times, and immediately I knew that something was off. I remember feeling way too hot.
If you know that somebody is making you a drink, I don't smoke, but either or, and they don't drink first, that's a black flag with the skull on it, bro. What is you doing?
But anyway, he passes the blunt to me.
No.
I hit it maybe 2 or 3 times, and I smoked more now than I ever would have thought of back then. You know, Life to
It doesn't
spares as a
say- It
millennial.
doesn't say that he.
But anyway, he
smoked
passes
that
the
off.
blunt to me.
He just made
I
that
hit it
line.
maybe 2 or 3 times, and immediately I knew that something was off. I remember feeling way too high, having taken just a couple of puffs. I also noticed that he wasn't smoking when I passed it back to him. He was pretending to hit it, then passing it back to me, saying that I needed to light it again. I also had trouble keeping the blunt lit. I think I had put it down out of frustration with this, and decided to just focus on chilling with him. Also, my head was spinning, and I started to feel increasingly incapacitated. I remember him suggesting that I finish my smoking, then lay down and relax a bit. At this point, I was just ready to leave and get the hell out of there. I remember it being so difficult to stand up. He notices this, and he gets up like he's trying to help me get up, but he kept pushing me further on the couch. At this point, real fear sets in, as I now realize he has ulterior motives, and it's escalating quickly. Now, I'm not small by a long shot, but I was struggling like hell as he was trying to take off my clothes. He had me by my throat and was forcibly kissing my neck. I managed to roll down onto the floor, and he fell down with me. We tussled a bit, but I eventually got up and stumbled to the door and made it outside. He was running behind me. As fate, favor, or whatever you want to call it has it, the police just so happened to be at the stop sign down the street.
Yeah, go tell
When
him.
he saw the police, he ran back in the house. I remember trying to flag them down, but I don't think they saw me, as they just kept going. This area wasn't the best, so the police patrolled quite a lot. It's kind of funny because we all used to joke about how they were not even stopping crime, even though they seemed to be on every block all the time. But after this day, I most certainly believe their mere presence stopped a more serious crime. I fumbled my keys and got in my car. I drove down the street and pulled over after turning at the stop sign. I was so out of it. Everything was double blurry and I was hallucinating. Thankfully, I made it home after driving 2 miles an hour the entire way. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, debating if I should call an ambulance and just tell the truth about smoking. Clearly, it was more than weed in the blunt. I felt horrible. My heart was racing and my head was pounding. I called my friend and she told me to just sleep it
Find out
off.
what that suspicious
She
substance
said so
is, yo.
casually that it was probably some angel dust or some form of crack or cocaine. Yeah, we're no longer friends for a number of reasons, but that's another story. Stories if I'm being real. But I did finally make it to my house, and I woke up the next day with a hangover. Not like an alcohol hangover, but more of an exhausting feeling, if that makes sense. I pretty much nursed myself the next day while reflecting on my choices. There were so many lessons with this situation. I essentially went to a stranger's house as a teenager, and I was drugged and almost sexually assaulted. This really made me fearful to date or even talk to anyone new for a long time. I never smoked again unless I saw it being rolled by a trusted person, which was usually within my friend group. I did see this guy a couple of times after this. He would come by my job and just smirk at me. It was truly terrifying, and it gave me a literal panic attack. I found another job shortly after this, and I really kind of regret not calling the police. I don't know if it would have done any good, but who knows how many girls have fallen victim to this sorry asshole. I still to this day have never found out what the blunt was laced with, but I have a tip for marijuana smokers. If you ever have trouble lighting your joint or blunt, that's a key indicator that there's more than just weed in it. Also, after hearing this, it should go without saying to only smoke with people that you completely trust. If you are rolling it, take a look at the weed before it's rolled. If that feels awkward, just say you want to look at the buds for strain study or something. It may sound nerdy, but who doesn't love the educated smoker in the group? Seriously guys, be careful. I've learned that not everyone has good intentions, no matter how persistent they are with showing interest in you. It also helps when you're not making stupid decisions like I did. Regardless, it doesn't give this guy and guys like this a pass. Be safe, everyone.
Ready to bring your brand into the real world? Shopify is ready for that too. With a retail
things of that nature. That's what's sad is like, obviously, the world we live in is very unfair. But to prepare yourself for the worst is the best. And I would always advise, especially if you don't know the person, like, you know, hanging out with somebody doesn't mean you know somebody. And the length of time doesn't mean you know somebody either. It's more so the depth of which you know somebody. And the only way you can deeply know somebody is having a deep connection with somebody. And how you have a deep connection with somebody is have deep conversations. That will weed out a lot of people. You want to have the right conversations. Stupid will leave very fast, and man, it's just so much. I truly believe that every woman should learn how to defend themselves properly, like take jujitsu and a striking martial art, like specifically grappling. If you could choose one, I would say do any grappling art. I would say specifically jujitsu for obvious reasons. And obviously, well, if you didn't know, jujitsu is more for the smaller person overwhelming the bigger person and using their leverage against them. Yeah, that should be a pro tip for every woman, is to learn how to protect yourself, having social awareness, and dip the first moment of a red flag, gut feeling, whatever, but not accumulating red flags and be like, oh, I've had 3 or 4 red flags and I'm benefit of a doubt and get a free meal. Bro, skip all that. It's between life and death.
I'm a 34-year-old female, but the story happened when I was maybe about 19 or 20 on Valentine's Day. Growing up, I never dated anyone until I was 17. Needless to say, I never had a Valentine. So on the day this happened, I had posted on my Facebook wall that I would again be single with no date. Yeah, I was that girl, so that people would feel bad for me and try to cheer me up and maybe even boost my ego. I had gotten one reply from a recent friend request. A guy who now I can't even remember his name, but I do remember he was a good-looking man. He messaged me saying that he would be alone too, and that maybe we should keep each other company on such a special day. I LOL'd, and I asked what did he have in mind, to which he replied with, dinner and a movie. I agreed, and we made plans on time where he could pick me up. That day I worked, but I would get out at an early enough time to go out on this date. I got home, got ready, and I told my mom I would be spending the night at my best friend's house. My mom believed it and just said, okay, mija, just be careful. This guy was supposed to pick me up at 7:30 to 8 at my building complex. I got the message that he was outside, and I grabbed my things to leave. When I get in his car, we greeted each other, and I remember thinking, oh my God, he's so cute. He had asked me about my day and if I was ready to go, which I replied with, yeah, let's go. He asked me if I wanted to go to a movie theater in my area. I lived in DC, and I said we could go anywhere that wasn't too far. Virginia or Maryland was less than 20 minutes away. Also, parking where I lived was horrible, and people would usually just get around in the train or buses. So he says we can go to Virginia and watch a movie there, and then we can go eat. I agreed, and off we went. I was pretty familiar with the area that we had driven through, so I knew where the movie theater was, and we were going the opposite way. I then said, isn't the movie theater the other way? He replied back with, yeah, but I don't like that one. There's a better one this way. Is that cool? Something in me felt a little off, but I just agreed and said, yeah, sure, whatever.
Boom. Red flag. I need y'all to notice these things. It's just like can't skip over the because red means stop. It don't mean I guess so. That's unlawful. I mean, in a realistic standpoint, to pass a red light when it's red.
Whatever you say. Everything seemed normal until we then turned right into a dark road. There were houses, but it looked like a newly constructed neighborhood, and the houses that were built completely were dark, which is weird because even if everyone's in bed, there's always some type of sign that people live in there. I started to panic a bit and asked him, what's this? Why are we going through this street? And he smirked and looked at me, then said, don't worry. I just want a little bit of alone time with you to get to know you. My heart started to race. I felt like this is the moment where I get sexually assaulted and maybe even killed. He parked and got closer to me and attempted to kiss me, but I just pulled away and told him that I didn't want to do that. He then decided to grope me on my chest, then said, relax, baby. It's okay. I pushed him off of me and I told him we're not going to hook up. He began to freak out, then saying, what the fuck? No girl's ever said no to me. You should feel lucky to be with a guy like me. He kept repeating that over and over. My eyes widened and I was in complete shock, but I mustered up the courage to say, well, I guess there's a first time for everything then. He looked at me with disbelief that a handsome guy like him. I could tell that his ego was really hurt, and I was really scared of what was going to happen next. A million thoughts ran through my head. Should I get off now? Where will I go? I don't know where I am. I really think God was on my side that night, because this man turned his car on, then sped off, then took a different route, and I told him, take me home now. If I knew you just wanted to hook up, I never would have came out with you. You really should have told me about your intentions, and then let me decide if I wanted the same thing. He just ignored me, and he drove to the nearest metro station and waited for me to get out. I was in shock to say the least, but I gladly got out of the car and then slammed his door. He sped off, and I was stuck at a station that had been closed for construction. I called my best friend, and she said she'd get me a taxi and pay for it. I thank God every day for giving me a best friend like her, and for not letting anything bad happen to me that night. After that experience, you'd think I'd learned to stop dating people online, but that continued. What I didn't do again was meet someone alone or at night. After that, I don't know what happened to that guy. I just remember blocking him and never looking back. It was truly one of the scariest things to happen to me.
Blessed. That's crazy, man. That could have ended.
My name is Felicia, and I'm a woman who's always developed better relationships with people online than in real life. But I've had a share of bad experiences, and this is one of them. I remember when I was around 22 years old, I went out on a date with a guy that I met on Meet Me, that I'm going to just refer to as he. And trust me, it was a very messed up situation. He first walked me around the city, just really enjoying the evening sky. With being a gypsy and always on foot, it didn't bother me whatsoever. But he was also having this awkward, weird conversation that he chose for us to have, as he ignored my topics and such. But then he was insisting that we go back to his house for a movie and pizza, which didn't seem weird, or so I thought.
It's weird if it's a first date.
So I agreed, and I didn't realize that he had literally been leading me there for the last 10 minutes without me knowing, until we show him to his house only a few minutes later. We went there and we were watching.
So she is on a walk with him. Surprisingly, when he mentions movie and at his place, they're already on the way there. Oh wow, I didn't even know we were this close.
In the movie, when he kept trying to cuddle and kiss me, but I just kept avoiding it all, to the point that I sat on the floor away from the couch, what made him angry. and he started talking crap to me for doing it. He never ordered or cooked dinner, and when I started feeling severe,
Usually I'd be like, well, I mean, there's food, but still, there's a wild amount of disrespect going on. Now would be a great time to leave. Like right now.
your stomach pain, I went to this bathroom and I had a medical issue. I was bleeding pretty badly, so when I came out and announced I had to go home, he got even angrier than before. I tried getting my shoes on and he then grabbed them, as well as my purse, before pushing me into his room, then onto his bed, and told me to go to bed. He put my stuff on the side of the bed beside him, and he laid down with his back to me. So I pretty much laid there for what felt like an eternity before he was hard body snoring, so I knew he was asleep. That was when I carefully and slowly rolled off the bed onto the floor, and then crawled over to get my things, and then crawled out of the room. I quietly put on my shoes and unlocked the door. I then slipped out and closed it before running down the stairs and then rushing out into the night air. But I didn't stop running until I got all the way home. I got home just in time to deal with the medical issue and change my clothes. I was in a shocked state for over an hour or so before my friend and roommate woke up and found me laying in the tub crying. Yeah, it was a really awful experience that I don't wish on anyone. Please, everyone, please be safe.
Safety
Are you
first.
interested in starting your own faceless
Safety
YouTube automation channel, but all
first.
people do is tell you to go to frickin' Fiverr and up?
My name is G. I'm a 23-year-old woman, and I'm in the happiest relationship of my life. But it wasn't always this way. Around what I think was 2017, I was socially awkward and I spent most of my time online. I'd gotten out of an awful relationship full of trauma, and I didn't want to meet anyone. But this isn't the ex I'm here to talk about. At the time, there was an app called Geeking. It was this weird app for role-playing, and 15 to 16-year-old me loved it. However, it is now off the App Store because of some alleged pedophilic actions by either the creators or the users. I can't remember which, but that isn't the point. I'd met some people on there, one of which I'm still close friends with to this day, but I also met John. John and I hit it off pretty quickly. I dropped my roleplay persona fairly early because he was pretty easy to talk to. He was very pervy though, and he liked to ERP a lot over the text function. ERP meaning erotic roleplay. I found out that he was 1 year older than I was at the time, and that he lived somewhere in Indiana. I lived in Virginia at the time. It was unlikely that we'd ever meet in person. John had no plans for college, but he had plans to become a voice actor. He spent all of his time playing video games, masturbating, and smoking pot. But young me was naive, and for some reason, I suppose it was loneliness and extreme anxiety interacting with people in real life. We started dating shortly after I graduated high school online. I had never met him in person, but we had talked a lot about it. Neither of us told our parents we were dating. He said it wasn't a good idea since my folks are very judgy, which they still are to this day. We dated in secret for a long time, and finally college had started for me. It felt like I had everything in line perfectly. I felt like my life was coming together. I felt safe enough to tell John about my sexual trauma from my past relationship, which was a big mistake. He had asked me all sorts of uncomfortable questions about it, almost like he was fetishizing it. I remember him actually asking me if it felt good when my ex raped me. He asked me if I'd ever done butt stuff with my ex. I remember him actually asking me if it felt good when my ex raped me. He asked me if I'd ever done butt stuff with my ex. I felt very uncomfortable, but I thought he was just looking out for me.
What? I am believing now that the naive, then is naivety a word? Nah. People that are naive cannot, it's almost like they cannot get out of that bubble of understanding that like red flags or gut feelings or something you just bypass. You should be out of there. Like, that is huge. That's crazy. Have you not watched scary movies? Like, man, what? It'd be funny because the same people that be watching scary movies be like, oh man, I want to do this. I'll do this instead. But then once it happens, then you don't even realize it, or you allowed to like slide under the radar. It's crazy.
So I said I had it. Well, a couple of nights later, he confessed to getting off to the thought of doing what my ex did to me, even saying that he wanted to anally rape me until I bled. He talked in great detail about taking my anal virginity from me because he couldn't take my actual virginity. He could tell that he had upset me. Then he got mad at me when I said it had. He told me to get over it. Then he hung up on me.
Excuse me? Excuse. I'd be like, restraining order immediately. Immediately. Because you can't call that into the police and be like, this is a crime, because it's not. Obviously, a paper isn't going to protect you. But I feel like there's going to be more conversation leading up to this rather than just like dead stopping it.
I apologized to him the next morning after crying myself to sleep that night, really wondering what I'd done wrong. Pretty soon, college had started. I lived on campus, and I wanted to do campus activities like any freshman would. I was determined to rebrand myself and start fresh. John didn't like this. He would regularly complain or cause fights before I was about to go do something, and when I'd go off to do something on my own, whenever I'd get back, he'd call me a bitch and then accuse me of cheating on him, since I was hanging out with some guy friends from a class I was taking. Side note, sort of. I should have noticed this was a red flag early on, but I didn't. I thought I was happy and in love. I'm bisexual, meaning I'm attracted to both men and women. Before John and I were dating, he had multiple ERP partners. I didn't mind this, but I had asked him to stop when we started dating. He had multiple ERP partners. I didn't mind this. I'm attracted to both men and women.
Multiple Earth partners? Hold on.
Before John and I were dating, he had multiple ERP partners.
It says her partner. I don't think. It sounds like Earth partner. Like, what?
I didn't mind this, but I had asked him to stop when we started dating. He said that wasn't fair because I was limiting him. I'm bisexual, so he thought it would be okay if I have sex with women but not men, so therefore he can ERP with other girls, and I didn't get to be hurt.
Oh, it's ERP partners. I need to look that up. I don't know what that is. Sounds weird. Partners. Meaning. What is an ERP partner? ERP partner, ERP, ERP, implementation partner, consults with business and identifies the best ERP. Yeah, I don't think that's solutions and configuration, custom. Yeah, that's not it. What does an ERP person do? So, yeah, I don't know what they're talking about, bro.
I don't know why I took that. I didn't want to do anything with anyone else but him. I quickly stopped going to places in college. I didn't go to club activities, and pretty soon I was way too depressed to even go to class, and I actually failed my first semester. My parents were pissed, understandably. I said that I'd do better the next semester after winter break. That Christmas break would change my entire life. We were visiting family in Kentucky, which was about a 3-hour drive from John. We decided that stupidly we would meet up, and I'd stay with him for a couple of weeks until I go back to school. My parents were against it, but I was determined to make it work. In January of 2020, after dating in secret for 5 months, we finally met up, and it was weird. My parents got a room, and John's mom was going to take him and I to dinner, since, he didn't have a driver's license. We went to a Red Lobster. He, his mom, and I sat at the table, and he casually said that, "Oh yeah, G and I are dating," and she kinda just went, "Oh, I kinda figured since you talk about her all the time," and then we ate dinner in peace.
Weird.
His mom had to run errands or something, and had brought us along, but we could stay in the car. In the back of the car, John was touching my thigh. I was really uncomfortable because his mom could have caught us, but he kept going. Eventually, his mom went into the store, and before I knew it, he was then kissing me and touching my chest. I wasn't expecting it, and it felt weird. He was squeezing way too tight, and it hurt. He pulled back and looked around before unzipping his pants. I told him that I didn't think that was a good idea, but he insisted that I suck it a little bit. When I said that I still didn't know, he then said that he could always just make me, so it's much better if I just agree. So I did as I was told. His mom came back after he decided he was done with me, and we went back to the hotel. She had told my parents that John and I were...
She should have listened to the parentals, bruh. She going against the grain, bruh. In this life, there's 2 L's you take. The lesson, there's 2 things that you take. Either the lesson that you learn from, or the lesson that you earn from. I hope she learned a lesson.
dating, and that she was more than happy to have me stay for a while. Everything went to shit. My mom started screaming and crying, and a lot of things were said that I regret to this day. John and his mom left, planning to pick me up so I could stay with them for the month. That night, my parents screamed at me, and when I tried to sleep, my mom sat over me and just glared at me while I slept. Which, by the way, I didn't get any real sleep that night. I just laid there. John and his mom picked me up at 8 a.m. the very next day, and my parents left for Virginia. She dropped us off at his former stepdad's house and went back to her place. John and I were alone, and I wanted to go to sleep. I got in his bed and I closed my eyes so I could sleep. He held me close and he asked what was wrong. I said that I just didn't feel good and that I wanted to sleep. He held me tighter, then saying, "I know something else that'll make you feel good." I knew exactly what he was implying, and I asked him if we could do that later on, that I had a long night and I just wanted to sleep. I was so tired. That's when he then sat up and got out of bed. I had unpacked some of my stuff, like a laptop and some clothing. He started packing it away angrily, telling me that I may as well just go back home. I was crying. He knew that I didn't want to go home and that there was no way for me to do that. I didn't want to go home, so I just let him have his way with me. It felt like an out-of-body experience. It was like I was just watching someone else. After he was done, he had held me close and kissed me, telling me that he loved me and I was wonderful. He then went to sleep, and I just cried. Throughout the whole month, we would just spend time either at his ex-stepdad's or his mom's. He regularly drugged and raped me. That month of my life is a blur. I don't really remember any of it. I finally went home on a bus ride, but I was way too embarrassed to tell my parents they were right and that being with John was a bad idea. I lied to them and I told them he was a perfect gentleman the entire time. After that, my life for the next 2 years went by fast, and then the pandemic happened. I did community college, and I kept failing courses. John demanded all of my time, and he would threaten me if I didn't talk to him 24/7. He continued to tell me that I was worthless and how I didn't deserve him. The story does have a happy ending, though.
See, this is why, like, when you find out there's like a type of person that says the wildest things, and you'd be like, there's no way you get girls to like you or have this and a third. Just because, like, stuff like this, it's tolerated, not in a way like necessarily willingly allowing somebody to do something, but because they're in fear of their life, or they threaten to harm them or harm them, doing crazy stuff like this, and they think that they got game. And ooh, Jesus, we need Jesus. Hey, the world needs Jesus, straight up. This is crazy.
About 1 year into my community college, I had made friends with this really nice guy. He developed a crush on me, and we became close friends. He helped me realize very quickly that I didn't deserve how John was treating me. He treated me with more kindness than anyone had ever had in my life. I eventually found the courage to finally leave John, and I largely credit my friend to helping me out. It scares me to think that I'd still be with John if it weren't for him. He and I have now been dating for almost 3 years, and I've never been happier. John, if for whatever reason you're hearing this, I hope that I never run across you again, and that you can either get help or heal the toxic, abusive person that you are. Good luck with that.
That's ridiculous. Man, stay safe out there, man. There's a lot of creeps, a lot of weirdos, a lot of everything out there. The best thing you can do is prepare for the worst and hope for the best in that sense. And then obviously being in situations that you are most valued and where you're not in a compromising position. That's where a lot of people fall short, is being in a compromising position that disaligns you from where you should be aligned and where you flourish. And there's not like where you're sacrificing anything. Like, the only time you should be sacrificing anything for somebody, your significant others, is they're either your fiance or your husband. There ain't no way, like, man, it's too much time or too little time to be wasted on some giving somebody a second chance stuff. Like, no. There's plenty of people out there. And also, if your parent or someone that you trust and you love obviously telling you something and you're gonna go against it, like, think about it at least twice. At the very least, think twice about why your decision would be better than them having your best interest. You know what I mean? Even if you feel like you're 100% right, just either even have that conversation or just question it in your mind and be like, why is it that I'm not adhering to sound advice from someone that loves me, and compared to meeting some random stranger or being in a relationship or being with a thing. There's a lot of times it's easy to avoid these types of situations. It's only harder to avoid when you're in the situation. So, hey, stay safe out there. Love you guys very much. Appreciate you guys for staying if you guys were able to. Got a little wild at the end. But nonetheless, yeah. Think twice on some things. You know what I mean? You going on a date or you got a gut feeling, trust that gut feeling first. I promise you. Trust that gut feeling first. Don't give a benefit of the doubt for nothing. You got to treat this thing as a life or death situation. There's no second chances with that. You can't respawn. But yeah, y'all guys be safe out there. Love you guys very much. Peace. We out of here.